Thanks for joining us today. This little chat is on behalf of the Landscape Ontario's Plant Symposium. It's going to be held on February 3rd in Fanshawe College in London, Ontario. And today's talk is going to be on plant health and soil management.
My name is Jocelyn Molyneux, and my business is Wastenot Farms. For over a decade, we've collected food waste from restaurants and offices. We've fed that to our worms. We have about 3 million red wiggler earthworms here at our farm just outside of Orangeville. And then we harvest the worm castings as the foundation of a line of regenerative soil products that go under the name Jocelyn's Soil Booster. Yes.
So the first one is, what does regenerative growth mean to you?
Well, regenerative growth in my mind is a really beautiful paradigm for where our society needs to go, rather than our current structure of linear growth, or this idea that we just need to take, make, and then waste. So I'm very much respectful to John and to Miller. They operate on a massive scale and do a lot of good work keeping organic material out of landfill. You know, I would make the point, of course, that in nature there is no such thing as waste. And, you know, as someone who worked in the waste management industry, and in fact, it was when I worked for a waste management company that I learned we were selling a compost service to our clients at a premium. But in fact, all of that material was going to a landfill in Michigan because of the economics. And we can't really have this conversation without, or at least we'd be dancing around the reality of the fact that sending food waste or even leaf and yard waste to a landfill is much less expensive than the composting process. And unfortunately, people don't appreciate, because, you know, the end product, as John mentioned, it is so valuable. It is full of nutrients, and it has a lot of uses. People inherently believe that it is an economically viable operation to be taking food waste, not appreciating how much work, how much effort has to go in to convert garbage into gold. And so for me, part of what I think is important is this idea that I don't refer to our inputs as waste. We collect food waste or food scraps from restaurants, coffee grounds. We work with other agricultural operations. We take waste wool or spent brewery grains. But really, you know, waste is just resources that are in the wrong place at the wrong time. And what we found with is that we can feed our 3 million earthworms, and they can quite easily, quite effectively turn those materials, those inputs, into this really valuable, they concentrate it. So 10 pounds of food scraps fed to worms becomes 1 pound of super concentrated, highly microbially diverse input when it comes out the other end in about a month's time. And it's important that you understand, and that we all understand, that what goes in ultimately affect what comes out. So unlike bait worm castings, which are seen all over the market, you know, those worms are unfortunately usually eating peat moss or sawdust. And the result is that the castings are not particularly valuable. And so what's unique about my business and why it's truly regenerative is it's turning this material, these inputs, into something of higher value, which when it's added to our landscapes, in fact, transforms the landscape so that it also has higher value. And that, to me, is this idea of regenerative. It becomes a positive feedback cycle. We do one good thing, we do another good thing, and then we put into motion this ongoing improvement that really, for me, is what gives me my passion, and it wakes me up in the morning, and it gives me hope that as we transition this industry, as we transition agriculture over to a regenerative approach, we are in fact going to solve problems related to human health, to food security, and of course, we're going to solve the climate crisis as well.
Soil health, when you hear that, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
Well, I really have committed my life to helping individuals, whether it's consumers or businesses, understand that the soil really is the solution for our climate crisis. And so when I think of healthy soil, I think of the opportunity to draw down massive amounts of carbon, and that ultimately it is the bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa, all those little organisms in soil, they're the ones responsible for storing that carbon in soil. And I often think that that gets lost or forgotten when we're talking about soil health and regenerative practices, that not only are we going to be growing healthier plants or food that is more nutritionally dense and longer lasting, but in fact, we are going to be promoting the sequestration of carbon in our soils. We're putting carbon back where it belongs. And if you don't mind, Dave, I'll mention here that one of the products in the Jocelyn Soil Booster portfolio is a peat-free potting soil. And this is really critical, I believe, because horticulture, as folks already mentioned, is a huge consumer of peat moss, and we're incredibly lucky here in Canada. We have massive peat bogs, and these are very sensitive, special ecosystems, highly biologically diverse, unlike anywhere else, and they store a huge amount of carbon. And when we mine those materials, we're adding more carbon to our already overloaded atmosphere. And so peat is unfortunately, it's cheap and it's easy to harvest. And therefore, these large horticulture companies like to use it. It has a lot of properties that make it easy to grow plants. But in fact, we have much better input. So in our sense, we're using a woody product that is screened out after the worm composting process is finished. We harvest the worm manure, and what's left over is a lot of partially degraded wood chips. And that is ultimately, after it's refined, it's what replaces peat in our living potting soil. So it's really things like that that, to me, when I think of soil health, when I think of regenerative growing, are the types of choices and the reasons why we want to make the choices to have a healthier future.